Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Juan. I hope you're doing well. So I'm here today because I need your help. I was going through my books recently and I realized that I have a few books that I haven't read, books that I owned, they're on my bookshelves, but I haven't read them. And what's worse, I don't have any plans to read them. So I thought that today I will show you the books. There are here, I have two piles of books. I'm going to show them all one by one. I'm going to tell you a little bit about each book and why they ended up in my collection. And at the end of the video, I'm going to ask you to go to the comment section down below and write the title that you absolutely want me to read. So from among all the books that I'm going to show you today, which one do you want me to read? Now, if somehow several of you have one book that you want me to read, if I go through the comments and there's a clear winner, I will read that book next month. So that's going to be in May 2022. We're in April 2022. So let's do that. Let me just show you the books, okay? Yeah, that was quite heavy. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books in total, okay? So the first 3 books that I want to show you today are the 3 volumes of the Border Trilogy by Cormac McCarthy. So I have the first volume, which is All the Pretty Horses. I have the second volume, which is The Crossing. And I have the third volume, which is Cities of the Plain. Now, if you're going to take part on my little game, it's up to you. You can just mention one of these 3 books if you want me to read one of them. Or if you want me to read the whole trilogy, absolutely, you can also say that. I have to say that I have read The Crossing, which is, no, not The Crossing. I have read All the Pretty Horses, which is the first volume, but only a few years ago, so I don't really remember much about it. And when I read these books again, when I reread All the Pretty Horses, I'm gonna read the rest of the trilogy, probably within the same month, or either that or in 3 different months, but in a row, because I really like to get the experience of reading these 3 books. As you can say, there's nothing special about these editions. I mean, I think the covers are quite nice. They're by Picador in the UK, so they're UK editions. I think they're quite nice. I'm gonna link to them in the description box in case you want to buy these same editions. I'm going to do that with all the books where possible, so you can buy the exact same versions that I have, and if not, something really close, the closest thing I can find. Okay, so why do I have Cormac McCarthy's The Border Trilogy? Well, I'm going to put the books down because they're not very heavy, but I'm getting tired. Okay, so so Cormac McCarthy is one of those American authors that has a huge reputation, and I have heard about him for years. Didn't really know if his writing was for me, but then The Road came out, I don't know, like 20 years ago, whenever it was, and I picked it up and read it like a lot of people and really, really liked it. And that has made me curious to read other books by him. Definitely the Border Crossing trilogy, that's top of my list. That's why I went ahead and bought these 3 volumes a while back, but they've been sitting on my shelf gathering dust since. But I also want to read Blood Meridian, and if I like those 4 books, I might read more by him. I'm not really that interested in the US-Mexican border. I'm not interested in exploring violence or anything like that, or masculinity in the way that I think Cormac McCarthy is, but his reputation is such that I want to explore it. I want to have that experience for myself so I can really say whether his writing is for me or not. His writing is something that I want to experience. I want to have that reading experience. I don't know if you know what I mean. It's almost like, I don't like talking about comfort zones, but people talk about comfort zones. I don't think I have a comfort zone when it comes to reading, but if I did, I would say that Cormac McCarthy and his Border Trilogy are probably going to be outside that zone of comfort. So, I like to test my limits and see how much I can enjoy things that I don't think are for me. But I am only willing to do that with great literature, and I have no doubt that Cormac McCarthy is a great writer. Okay, next I have this hardback edition of Gone with the Wind. You can see that it looks kind of like old-timey, and there's a reason for this. This is a hardback edition, and it replicates the first edition, the cover from the first edition. The dust jacket is a reproduction of that. That's why it looks like something from the 1930s. But of course, this book that I have here is not, this actual object is not from the 1930s. It wouldn't be in such a good state. It is a very nice edition. And yeah, Gone with the Wind was one book that I wanted to read, I think, last year. And I did try. You can see, probably, that I've made it all the way to page 567, which is the beginning of chapter 34. Now, I stopped reading this book because, not for the usual reasons, there's a lot of racism in here. Obviously, that doesn't really put me off because, well, I couldn't be alive if racism put me off reading books or doing anything. It's a fact, it's there, reading about it, not reading about it is not going to make it go away. And I really like the movie adaptation, which I've seen many times. But then I started reading this book and it just kept reminding me of the movie, which I'm very familiar with. And there's nothing, I couldn't see anything of literary value, of extra literary value that will keep me reading this novel. So the feeling I had was that when I was reading this, going through this novel, I thought I could be reading something else and probably enjoying it a lot more and getting a lot more out of something else. So I put it down, and that's what I did. I picked up something else instead, and I don't even remember what that was. And yeah, I put this one aside and never picked it up again. But if some of you vote for this book, I will finish it next month. Next, I have a book that I'm looking forward to reading. I just haven't found the right reason to read it yet, if that makes sense. If you follow my channel and watch many of my videos, you'll know that how I kind of plan my reading. So this one hasn't really come up yet. And it's The Man Who Loved Children by Christina Stead. So Christina Stead was an Australian writer, but she's, I think she probably moved to the States. This book is set in the States. It says here, Sam and Henny Pollard have too many children, too little money, and too much loathing for each other. As Sam uses the children's adoration to feed his own voracious ego, Henny becomes a geyser of rage against her improvident husband. And caught in the midst of it all is Louisa, Sam's watchful 11-year-old daughter. So, unhappy families, which is an endless source for literary inspiration and for really good novels. This novel is also blurbed by Jonathan Franzen. In the back, he says, "This crazy, gorgeous family novel is one of the great literary achievements of the 20th century. I carry it in my head the way I carry childhood memories. The scenes are of such precise horror and comedy that I feel I didn't read the book so much as live it." Now, this means a lot to me now, this quote. It didn't when I first bought this book. By the way, I bought this book because some people were talking about it on YouTube, and I really liked the cover. This quote by Jonathan Franzen now means a lot to me because I read the corrections a little bit ago, as you know, and I know some of you read along with me. And I love the corrections by Jonathan Franzen, which of course is also a big novel about a very unhappy American family. So that endorsement by Jonathan Franzen really makes me want to read The Man Who Loved Children. But it's up to you. It's up to you. You decide. Let me know in the comments if you think I should read this in May or not. And next, I have the story of John Cheever. If you watched my video from last week, and I hope you did, you heard me say that I have found a way of reading and enjoying short stories in a way that I had never or very rarely been able to enjoy them. And I mentioned in that video a few authors whose short stories I wanted to read. And one of them was John Cheever, the big short story writer from the 20th century, big American short story writer from the 20th century. Of course, he also wrote and published a few novels, which I would like to read at some point, most notably Falconer, I think I would love to read, and something else whose title escapes me right now. But I have this volume. So this has all his short stories. The problem is that the font is quite small. I don't know if you can see it. There's a little blurb by Philip Roth, who's also another of my favorite writers, on the cover of this volume. So I'm just going to read this to you. It says, John Cheever is an enchanted realist, and his voice, in his luminous short stories and in the incomparable novels like Bullet Park and Falconer, is as rich and distinctive as any of the leading voices of post-war American literature. That's enough for me to want to read John Cheever's stories. But there are two things. So Bullet Park was the other novel by John Cheever that I couldn't remember a couple of minutes ago. And the other thing is Philip Roth. Philip Roth is one of my favorite writers, not just one of my favorite American writers, but just one of my favorite writers. But I realized that I went through a binge of his novels before I started this channel, so I don't think I've ever really talked about Philip Roth and my love for his writing or any of his novels on this channel, and that's such a shame, because if you've been following me all the time I've had this channel, you probably think you have a good idea of what my reading tastes are, and now I'm feeling like a bit of a fraud because, you know, I don't think that's probably very accurate. I think I've been more documenting my reading in the last couple of years that I've had this channel, but I haven't really talked about my favorite writers that much, and I probably haven't even mentioned some of them like Philip Roth. So that has to change. So that's food for thought for me for future videos. And then I have this gorgeous hardback edition, cloth-bound edition of The Thousand Autumns of Jacob the Zoot by David Mitchell, author of Cloud Atlas. Now, this is a novel I bought because I went to see David Mitchell in 2010 give a reading of this book. So I bought the book and I got it autographed by him. And I loved the reading. I loved the conversation he had with the audience, well, with the host of the event. And I went and got it signed, and he read from it, and I thought it was fantastic. Then I started reading it, and I got really bored. I thought it was really boring. So David Mitchell was an author that I thought I would like. That's something I thought around 2010, so 11, 12 years ago now. And, you know, I bought all his books in paperback edition. So I bought paperback editions of all his books, and I had them on my, I don't have them anymore. Otherwise, I would show them to you. And I tried Cloud Atlas, I tried this one, I probably tried other things, and I just couldn't get into any of them. There's only one novel by David Mitchell that I've read back to back and enjoyed. And that one was Black Swan Green. So in 2010, when he published this novel, he had published 4 novels: Ghost Written, Number 9 Dream, Cloud Atlas, and Black Swan Green. And the only one I read and liked was Black Swan Green, but that was a bit of a departure. It's a very autobiographical novel. It's a very realist novel. So it doesn't have any of the magic, I don't even know if it's magical realism or science fiction or whatever, fantastical elements that his other novels have. Not sure if this one has those elements either, but this is, I remember from reading it and from what I remember from that event that I attended, it's a historical novel set in Japan when the country became more open and the Dutch arrived. I don't know if the Portuguese had already been there previously or if they went there later. I'm a bit foggy with my Japanese history, you'll forgive me. I still keep this book in my collection, even though I've gotten rid of a lot of other books that I bought around that time, because I just like the edition. It's very handsome, it looks good on my shelves, and it is signed by the author. Mostly I'm keeping it because it's signed by the author. Have you read it? Have you read The Thousand Autumns of Jacob the Zoot? Now it kind of strikes me that the title is not very good, but I don't know. It's a book that I've never heard anyone talk about, so, but I know But I know that a lot of people read David Mitchell's books and love David Mitchell's writing. So let me know if you want that to be my book to read next month. So yeah, these are the 7 books that I have on my shelf, and I have no plans to read, but I need your help. Let me know in the comment section if you want me to read any of them. Bye.